But beyond that, I suspect that they probably took this initiative and then forgot to change it, which I think is a massive help for the record. It's completely unacceptable. I would never be an advocate for this. We should think about the alternative reasons as to why they might have done such a thing. Anyway, let's look at this. So this is an update. Streaming platform Twitch apologized after Israelis found they couldn't register as users. So, yeah, what my suspicion was is, I think what ended up happening, which is that, like, they were being overly cautious and trying to stop, like, IP banning, like, everyone that is from Palestine or Israel, because they use the same ISPs, in creating new accounts so they can, like, upload footage of October 7th. I think that when people say copium overly cautious, I think they don't realize, like, they don't realize, like, you have to find an alternative reason for it. Okay, like, not only do I assume that this is largely because, like, they have this is the post austerity Twitch where they don't have enough workers for anything really, but beyond that, I suspect that they probably took this initiative and then forgot to change it, which I think is a massive help for the record. It's completely unacceptable. I would never be an advocate for this. We should think about the alternative reasons as to why they might have done such a thing and entertain them, specifically because of how stupid it is to think of the alternative. Anyway, the popular video live streaming platform Twitch has been accused of after Israeli users discovered they were unable to create new accounts. As revealed by Ron Barzik on his X profile, the company blocked users with Israeli internet addresses days without an official response, but eventually Twitch issued a lengthy apology on its X account, explaining its rationale and stating that the ban had been lifted. According to Twitch, the ban targeted the email verification process for creating an account. The company claimed it was part of an effort to prevent the uploading of content in response to the events of October 7 last year, when it attacked a string of Israeli border communities, approximately 1,200 people, sparking the ongoing war. Twitch said the block was inadvertently left in place and was only lifted once the issue was brought to its attention, but many users took issue with the explanation, noting that the ban had appeared to be based on internet protocol addresses rather than email verification. It's unclear why the block persisted for months despite numerous complaints from Israeli users, or why it was imposed in the first place. Critics also question why similar restrictions weren't placed on users from other conflict zones such as Ukraine. This is not the only time that Twitch has faced accusations of earlier this week. Another controversy emerged at TwitchCon from the platform's annual convention. A viral clip from one of the panel's well-known streamers ranking other streamers on a scale of ranking ranging from Arab to Love Sabra, with the latter representing the lowest ranking. The Sabra hummus brand in the United States, a joint venture between PepsiCo and Israeli-based Strauss Group. Given that Sabra is also a common term for Israeli-born Jews, it's not, or at least, like, not, I didn't even know that. And the first person ranked at the bottom was a Jewish streamer, Ethan Klein, known as H3H3 on the platform. Many interpret the ranking as one from Arab to Jew. One panelist added, I'll just say it, there should be an even lower category called Zionist, which was met with applause from the audience. Klein himself responded to the short video on his YouTube channel, saying that the panelists have a history of making comments under the guise of Israel or Zionism. He said he wasn't surprised by the incident. Klein also claimed that Twitch has a history of problematic behavior towards Jews, or at least a tolerance of statements. He highlighted cases involving popular streamers Fresh and Fit, who posted tweets, and Sneeko, another well-known streamer who praised Hamas. Both were temporarily suspended, but not permanently banned from the platform. So out of all of the criticisms that that Twitch has been taking in terms of, like, the package, the onslaught of, like, allegations, that paragraph right there is the only valid one. That is straight up. I mean, the IP block and not, like, restoring the IP ban or whatever is also unacceptable, obviously. And I do think that that's most likely oversight. But this, on the other hand, I do not agree with in any way, shape, or form. Just like I don't agree with any sort of, like, any sort of restriction from, like, making new accounts. Wasn't the IP ban also affecting Palestine? Yes, of course. So, another notable case is the Hassan Abi, Turkish-American streamer who presents himself as a left-wing commentator on current events. Piker has hosted guests on his channel, including on one occasion a Houthi pirate who discussed the activities of the Yemeni Islamist rebel group, which is known for slogans such as Piker has repeatedly spread false information and propaganda, sometimes veering into. Despite this, Twitch has taken little action against him, suspending him for just 1 week for a specific comment. Wait, what? Who wrote this article? They brought forward the cracker ban? Dog, what is happening? Are they just like, come on, man. I rely on Haaretz. I use it on a daily basis. I love Gideon Levy. What the f is this? You guys are supposed to be real journalists, man. What the? Come on, dog. So far, the platform has not responded to growing complaints from users accusing it of failing. I like that there's, I like that they went, Piker has repeatedly spread false information and propaganda. Point to them. Can you point to the false information that I was spreading in propaganda? Now, this is, I think, worse than anything else because, like, this is a reputable paper. And I've said this before, as far as, like, Haaretz goes, like, obviously, there are fantastic writers on there, fantastic reporters on there, and then there's some not so fantastic reporters on there. That is every newspaper in general. It's interesting that they would like that this passes the smell test of like a decent report. I think it doesn't, right? Like, how is this? Is this like it's not even framed as an op-ed? It's just straight up like this is real news reporting. But you know that's neither here nor there. So tired. Like, why are we focusing on ripping apart a Twitch streamer? I mean, I think that ultimately it doesn't matter. You weren't contacted either. No, that's what's really crazy about it. That's like I would have expected Haaretz to literally do a little bit more. I thought that they would have actually done like real reporting on it. Now, notice how they can't grab onto anything because I'm very careful and very deliberate with my language, even if I have my pop-off moments or whatever. There's just not really much you can point to. So it's always like second-degree associations, third-degree associations, who I've interviewed, you know what I mean? Like, and I've seen this happen before. It's just when the situation becomes like unmanageable, when there's no real way to like defend Israel's actions in the West, like you just have to try to silence some of the biggest critics, right? And that's it. You interviewed an extremist who fought alongside the Kurds. Okay, don't tell the Turks that, but I have done that. I'm fed up with all the disingenuous allegations of yeah. Did you see Stop tweet about you? No, man. Why are you? I don't give a shit, dude. Stop.org. They're delusional. It's like one crazy woman from Long Island, dog. It's not like a reputable institution. What are you talking about? They're more predisposed with yelling about Dua Lipa and Gigi Hadid than anything else. Okay, calm down. Yeah, it's no different than someone being like, did you see my tweet? Yeah, for context, that organization considers Bizan from Gaza, Greta Thunberg, Bassem Youssef, Jamal Bowman, Corey Bush, Rashida Tlaib, Gigi and Bella Hadid, Trevor Noah, Dua Lipa, Mehdi Hassan, AOC. They're insane. Okay, the first two guys openly denied us, and then they're like, this Hassan guy said the C word and mean things about Israel. I know. It just like doesn't really fit, does it? It doesn't really fit the bill, I don't think. It's disingenuous framing. I don't want to give it too much attention, but I suspect that this will be like an ongoing thing, an ongoing back and forth, non-freaking stop. And, you know, it is what it is. I'm used to it. This has been happening for 6 years now, you know? I'm getting the feeling that they've started an active campaign to smear you. I fear they won't stop until they deplatform you. Yes. There is not anything I can do aside from hoping that people will have the capacity in this barrage of ridiculous smears that they have the capacity to be charitable. It is especially because I think especially because like most people understand where I'm coming from when it comes to the issue of Palestinian emancipation. Like even if they're not primed with all the knowledge of like, oh, is this Islamophobic? Or even if they themselves might be a little Islamophobic personally, like they still, no matter what happens, like they still have this understanding that like what Israel is doing is kind of up, right? Like that, I think that's what most people, like most people's approach, especially in our demographic, like under the age of 35, but even older now, is like, yeah, we should probably dial back at the very least. Like we should probably dial back what Israel's doing. And so a lot of this stuff will ring hollow because most people can see right from wrong. And I feel bad for other content creators on this platform. I feel bad for other content creators who are like also being targeted in the same way. No one should have to withstand this level of like cyber stalking and harassment. And since Gamergate, we haven't really figured out a coherent way coherent and you know, successful way of dealing with this. Like, there isn't any legislation around it. You know what I mean? It's just, it's very odd. But at the end of the day, it's super simple, dude. I do not believe that Israel represents all Jews. I think that that is inherently, as a matter of fact, many Nazis also say that. Okay? And I don't know. I just don't think that it's like, I don't think it's appropriate to make this conflation. I think it is inherently dangerous to make this conflation. That's it. And I think that Israel, I know it's a state on a good day. It's conducting in Gaza right now over the course of the past 12 months. If you don't have an issue with that, I don't know what to tell you. If you do have an issue with that, if you are frustrated by that, then good. Okay? But I think it's genuinely unconscionable to 95% of Jews support Israel. You can't change facts. You're just wrong. That's not correct. That one statistic that people who want to defend the notion that like criticizing Israel is and people who are both use this, okay? This is the hilarious part about it, is that people who despise Israel and are also versus people who love Israel and are trying to defend Israel by claiming any sort of criticism of Israel say this exact same thing, okay? It is insane. It is incorrect. There are two reasons for it. One, Zionism has a purposely and very deliberately vague, a vague definition, okay? It's always changing. It's always fluid. That's number one. That's the main reason why most people are like, most Americans, if you ask them like, oh, do you think Israel should exist? Due to social conditioning and not knowing what Israel has been doing for the past 76 years, will go, yeah, of course. That makes sense. And then boom, they go, that's Zionism. And yeah, that number doesn't change across the board for any American or American Jews in general. That's the primary reason. Second, that statistic comes from one of the worst polls of all time. I remember doing a deeper dive about this. a while back. It's like literally a guy who asked like 10 people or something, and then they just ran with it forever and in perpetuity. It unironically does not fit the bill. It doesn't fit the current understanding of Israel's actions. And it is a dangerous thing to consistently wave around. Yeah, Jewish Currents did a deep dive on this, okay? Great article. Are 95% of Jews really Zionists? Polls of American Jewish opinion on Israel may not be asking the right questions, okay? Barry Weiss in Tablet, in her first piece of writing since her resignation from the New York Times opinion section, in which she complained that the left had become too hostile to American Jews to support her point, she noted that 95% of Jews support the Jewish state. This statistic is commonly repeated in Jewish and mainstream media. This year, it's been cited in several opinion pieces and a peer-reviewed academic article. Last year, among various other appearances, it showed up in a Wall Street Journal book review, a New York Times letter to the editor, and a JTA op-ed. The statistic originates from an August 2019 article by Gallup senior scientist Frank Newport. In response to Donald Trump's controversial comments that American Jewish Democrats were being disloyal to Israel, Newport set out to examine Jews' political views. Drawing on the polling data from Gallup and other organizations, he contended that Jews generally have more favorable views of Israel than the broader American public. But nonetheless, and once again, this is in 2019, but nonetheless concluded that Trump's actions in support of Israel to date have done little to shift Jews' largely democratic political allegiance. To support the former point, he included an estimate that 95% of Jews have favorable views of Israel. However, as Newport noted in the article, this estimate was not based on a representative survey of American Jews, which would be designed specifically to capture the views of a niche American community. Instead, it was aggregated from Gallup's nationally representative samples of all Americans over 5 years. In an email to Jewish Currents, Newport confirmed his methodology for reaching the 95% figure. He identified 128, it wasn't 5 people, it was 128 people who described their religion as Jewish in the broader studies and used that subsample for his calculation. He estimated that the margin of error for his calculation was between 7 and 10%, explaining, with small sample sizes, there is significant margin of error on either side of the point estimate, so the calculations are just that, estimates. Yet the statistic is rarely described in its context as Newport's back-of-the-envelope estimate, based on only 128 Jewish by religion respondents over 5 years. Instead, it is regularly repeated as a truism. cited as evidence that American Jews who are more ambivalent about Israel are an insignificantly small minority in the community. Soon after Newport published his piece, Forward Opinion editor Batya Ungar-Sargon admonished non-Jewish progressive leaders not to use the supposed 5% of Jews as cover for movements that are unwelcoming to the 95% of Jews who have favorable views towards Israel. Tablet senior Yair Rosenberg encouraged people to get out of their Twitter bubbles. The Newport calculation is just one of several statistics that Jewish commentators frequently cite as evidence for pro-Israel consensus in the Jewish community. Yet, as this case shows, many journalists, pundits, and even academics often misunderstand polling methodologies, resulting in serious miscommunication of these results to the public. In Newport's figure, the size and composition of the sample is suspect, but the polls that specifically sample American Jews rather than Americans generally can have shortcomings due to the wording of the questions. Most surveys that ask American Jews about Israel-Palestine implicitly assume that a respondent's relationship to Israel is generally positive and relatively uncomplicated, while also operating within the rapidly fading framework of a conventional two-state solution. At the same time, questions usually do not directly measure other values that American Jews might hold, such as concern for democracy or Palestinian human rights. Limitations and biases for existing polling, combined with the miscommunication of the results in the press, make it easy for Jewish leaders to dismiss those who dissent from the establishment consensus on Israel. In the process, the public is deprived of a more accurate of trends in American Jewish perspectives on the Jewish state. One other factor to consider here is the obvious insane level of social conditioning. Okay? One thing that I've talked to with a lot of incredibly intelligent Jewish friends of mine, and I've done these conversations, I've had the conversations on the broadcast, as you guys know, is the notion that, especially for a lot of Reform Jews, which is a pretty large block of American Jews in general, is that Zionism has basically been substituted as a religion, as a secular religion for a lot of American Jews in their upbringing. Okay? There is a tremendous amount of social conditioning at play here. So with all of that and the vague generalizations of what it means to be a Zionist, okay, the polling data on this is not going to be entirely accurate of the reality, okay? For some, and I'll give you an example of this, for some, it simply means like, can Jews live there, okay? For many, as a matter of fact, it just means like, can Jews live there? Now, when you ask that question, of course everyone's going to say yes. I think yes. My answer is yes to that. Does that make me a Zionist? No, of course not. Do you understand? For others, it means Israel must maintain a demographic majority built around the ideology of religious and ethno-supremacy, okay? For the broadest majority and the actual real definition, that's what Zionism is. So when people are angry about this kind of thing, they're angry towards that notion that is materializing in front of our eyes as Israel has maintained a state for 76 years and is currently conducting it for the past 12 months and now is the shit out of Lebanon on top of that. A seven-front war, as they say. So like, of course, people are looking at that and going, no, that's what Zionism is. It's happening in front of our eyes. It's unfolding. Horrors beyond, man-made horrors beyond comprehension. That's what they see. Because that's what it is. Do you understand? Anyway, after all that, Lamau, my bad, this poll isn't reliable. Thanks, man. Anyway, in an interview with Jewish Currents, Matthew Boxer, an assistant research professor at the Cohen Center for Modern Jewish Studies and Steinhardt Social Research Institute at Brandeis University, the only people on Twitter that have ever said unkind things about my wife or daughter are Zionists. I'm not saying the Nazis or the Bond dogs or whomever wouldn't do that. I'm just saying Zionists are the only ones who ever have. That's Izzy. So that's why I was laughing with Noah when he was on. I was like, who would the president of ADL, Greenblatt, who would he first? Would he me or you? Like if he lined us up and he had one bullet, like you're a Zionist Jew, and I am a Muslim. I don't know who he has more smoke for. I think it's him. I think the ADL despises the presence of Jews, especially so prominently featured in the pro-Palestinian movement in this country. And I think it's very frustrating that these guys not only exist, but have existed historically and are very vocal, okay? And they're not a tiny, minuscule minority, no matter how hard people who want to defend Israel claim that they are. Not only are they on the right side of history, not only are their moral compasses correct on this issue, okay? but they also do not represent a tiny marginal constituency. It's ridiculous to say so. It is, I would say, to say so, as a matter of fact. Do you know any good polls on this subject that we can look at instead? Maybe this one has it. Anyway, regarding the sample size of 128 respondents, Boxer explained, it's not large enough sample that I would feel particularly comfortable reporting estimates from it. Boxer also pointed to the fact that those 128 Jews came from nationally representative sample of Americans, rather than of American Jews, specifically, which could misrepresent Jews in a million different ways. Most national surveys that ask for religious identification do not include Jews of no religion, those who consider themselves Jewish by culture or ethnicity, but do not consider Judaism their religious identity, a group which comprises approximately 22% of American Jews, according to a 2013 Pew survey of American Jews. Since JNRs consistently express significantly less attachment to Israel, their exclusion skews results. A subgroup of nationally representative sample poll will also be less accurate because Jews are distributed in the population differently than non-Jews. For example, American Jews are more likely to live in urban and coastal areas than the typical American, but in a nationally representative sample, you're not drawing disproportionately enough from those urban locations to get the proportion of Jews who live in those places, Boxer says. According to Boxer, this rural-urban divide can have multiple effects on accuracy when taking a subgroup from a nationally representative sample. So this just basically picks apart why this poll is like very, but I mean, this is from 2021. Poll finds a quarter of U.S. Jews think Israel is a state. Also, 22% of respondents believe Israel is committing it. 67% say denying Jewish states' right to exist. This is in 2021. If you were to ask the broader American public, they would probably have the exact same approach. If not even a smaller percentage of Americans at the time would probably consider Israel to be a state. Just so you understand. And remember, this is a product of tremendous amounts of social conditioning, okay? Schools and cultural institutions that are designed to create a sense of community are almost always singularly, they're almost always singularly united on this one issue. And in spite of that, in spite of all of that, there are still so many prominent Jews. As a conservative, I was told to hate you for your beliefs, and I have, but your rant just changed my understanding of Israel and the control of the Zionists. What do you mean? America uses Israel as a weapon, okay? You need to understand that. We use Israel as a weapon. Israel might be a willing participant in this process, and certainly the Israeli government is, and certainly many parts of Israeli society are willingly on board. But make no mistake, we are the ones who give the weapons, and we are the ones who say, go off kings. Okay? That's it. That's the reality. We are the senior partner in this coalition, not them. So every single conversation that we have, you should remember that. Okay? Anyway, how Americans view Israel, Netanyahu, and U.S.-Israel relations of 5 charts. More than half of Americans had a favorable view of Israel in 2022 survey versus 41% had an unfavorable view. Majority of Americans ages 65 and older had a favorable opinion of Israel. That hasn't changed. This is in 2023. Okay, Republicans and Republican-leaning independents were more likely than Democrats and Democratic leaners to have a positive view of Israel, 71% versus 44%. Conservative Republicans were especially likely to express favor, 75%. Majorities. Doesn't that strike you as odd, by the way? Doesn't that even like remotely ring any alarm bell whatsoever? Is that there is one group that is firmly committed to Israel's destruction campaign, and that is white evangelical Protestants. Has that not rang any alarm bells in anyone's minds? Because there are plenty of kind, progressive, thoughtful American Jewish Zionists, okay? And on the issue of Israel, they are just so firmly aligned with some of the most rabid freaks. How does that happen? It requires a little bit of scratching the surface, a little bit of re-examination. Jesus Christ, Twitter research, Jesus Christ's community has changed. Twitter research, dog, why are my haters blind and deaf simultaneously? We are currently looking at polling from Pew Research, brother. What are you saying? Like, do you not see what's in front of your eyes? Like, what is wrong with you? My haters, I genuinely think my haters just like are not responding to even shapes and colors in front of them any longer. They're just responding to like what they perceive I am doing. They hear common talking points from like haters, and then they just delude themselves into thinking that is what's going on, and then they hallucinate an alternative reality. Anyway, majority of Protestants and Catholics had a favorable view of Israel compared to around 4 in 10 religiously unaffiliated Americans. In 2022, Americans were more likely to have a favorable opinion of Israel than its government. 2/3 of Americans saw the Israeli people favorably. Far fewer had a favorable view of Israeli government. Other center research shows when Americans are asked to assess other countries, they tend to focus primarily on that place's government as opposed to its people. For example, Americans are more critical of China's government than of its people. About a quarter of Americans said in March 2023 survey that they had never heard of Netanyahu, but among those who had, more saw him negatively than positively. Some 42% of Americans said they had no confidence in Netanyahu to do the right thing. Most Americans, 74%, said in 2022 that the relations between the United States and Israel were good. Older Americans were more likely than younger ones. This is from 2022. Where's the 2023 research? I thought this was literally the 2023 research. Germany's most trusted and most neutral public news media published a video in 2017 explaining how to test if criticism towards Israel. They called it the 3Ds test: demonization, double standard, and delegitimization. I don't want to hear what Germans have to think about their metric for what they consider to be. In May 2024, a survey was conducted among American Jews from the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs. In the aftermath of the Israeli Defense Forces' entry into the Rafah border area, President Biden's announcement of a potential arms embargo. Here were some of the key findings. How concerned are you for your family's future as an American Jew of what you have seen from the campus? Okay. A big chunk, 28% said a great deal. 27.79% said a lot. 22% said a moderate amount. 13% said a little. And 8% said not at all. This is important to set the standard because this is an audience that is primed into thinking that any kind of pro-Palestinian sentiment, very obviously, like those that were demonstrated by the campus protesters, is actually inherently and is rising in the country. Think about that. Accusations. Approximately 1/3 of respondents agreed with the accusation that Israel is committing it. What about half disagreed? This sentiment aligns with concerns over personal relationships with non-Jews, which have been negatively affected since the start of in the United States. Okay? Israel has been accused of by pro-Palestinian activists. Do you agree with that contention? This is like not exactly framed in a positive way either, by the way. This is already an inherently negative framing on this question. And even then, 12% say strongly agree, 17% say agree, 18% say neither agree nor disagree, and then 24% say 24% say disagree, 26% say strongly disagree. These poll results, especially when broken down on demographic boundaries, specifically of age, will show you a that is damn near identical to that same exact demographic difference, attitude shift for the rest of the American society. Non-Jewish Americans and Jewish Americans break down on the exact same age boundaries. Okay? Hassan, it feels like you're a one-issue voter. Am I crazy for saying this? What? Hassan, my problem is how you speak about geopolitics. You give Kamala far more credit for the crisis than other pro-Israel Republicans. Wait, what? No, I don't. And also, what do you mean? You think I agree with Kamala on almost everything except geopolitics? Do you just like tune out when I shit on Kamala Harris for literally hitting the center right talking points on every single issue? Like, do you guys go, la, 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 I can't hear you? No, my criticisms, and I talk about this in this Newsweek article, as a matter of fact, revolve not around the issue of Israel-Palestine, which is a uniparty decision regardless, okay? It doesn't matter if a Republican is in charge. It doesn't matter if a Democrat is in charge. That will continue, okay? As a matter of fact, my suspicion is that it will get marginally worse, even though it is the maximum thing you can do, if under a Trump administration, okay? Like, that's my assessment on this issue. There are whenever I'm doing domestic political analysis for the upcoming election, I do talk about it because it is an important issue in terms of like capturing a base of support or feeding into the momentum that you've gotten. But beyond that, I'm more often than not talking about Kamala's immigration policy or the Democratic Party's immigration policy that is noticeably shifted to the right of where they were in 2020. exactly prime to what the Trump administration was hitting on 2020, as a matter of fact, including but not limited to building the wall. These are the types of things that I talk about. And it's not necessarily that I just like talk about it with myself. I literally have prominent journalists from the New York Times on to discuss these matters. I have journalists that used to work with Washington Post, now write at Semaphore. Like, it's not like I just, you know, sit around and just talk shit.